Baconator. That's right, a Baconator for breakfast. So go tell the world you're with Wendy's breakfast now. And hurry into Wendy's for the breakfast of your dreams today. We got you.
At participating U.S. Wendy's.
Got golf on the brain? Well, there's no better time to golf than now. And there's no better membership option out there than the Ron Jaworski Golf Eagle Pass membership. Go to ronjaworskigolf.com and learn how you can belong to 7 courses for the price of 1. That's right, 7 courses for the price of 1. This golf membership is an amazing value that allows individual, family, and corporate memberships playing privileges to all of Jaworski's award-winning courses. Visit ronjaworskigolf.com and click on memberships. At Ron Jaworski Golf, you don't join, you belong.
Place your legal sports bets at BetRivers.com, your new home for sports betting. Millions of betting options a year on the sports you love. We offer live in-game betting on major sporting events worldwide. Tons of bets available during games, from money lines, prop bets, and many more. And when you win, we offer fast and reliable withdrawals. Sign up now, and we'll match your first deposit up to $250. More bets, better odds, more action. Place your sports bets at BetRivers.com. Presented by Rivers Casino Pittsburgh. Must be 21 or over to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
At American Power and Gas, they believe a power company should provide more than just affordable energy. That's why, in honor of Veterans Day, American Power and Gas is giving away 1 month of free energy to all new customers in Pennsylvania who enroll at AmericanPowerandGas.com before end of day Wednesday, November 11th. You heard right. When you enroll at AmericanPowerandGas.com, you get 1 free month of energy, no strings attached. You'll also get competitive rates on 100% green energy, $50 a month to spend on their rewards platform, and an annual rebate check. All with no contracts, no cancellation fees, and no risks. You can cancel at any time. Get 1 month of free energy when you enroll at AmericanPowerandGas.com by Wednesday. All Pennsylvanian enrollments will be automatically included in this great offer. No code needed. Terms and conditions apply. Enroll today at AmericanPowerandGas.com.
I'm Erin Nareski. I'm an interstitial lung disease specialist at the Temple Lung Center. We have a group of highly specialized clinicians who treat nothing but complex lung diseases and who work together to formulate plans of care for patients who may not have had options elsewhere. It makes me feel proud to know that my patients can receive that incredible level of care at the Temple Lung Center.
See what treatment options the Temple Lung Center has for you. Call 800-TEMPLE-MED. One thing we've learned from all the uncertainties this year is just how valuable a college education really is. It's a way to future-proof your career. And that's why at Rider University, we're lifting barriers to make a college education more affordable than ever. Starting in fall 2021, our cost of tuition for new students will be reduced by 22%. Plus, we're investing in resources that support student outcomes and are doubling down on the experiences most likely to lead to career success. Learn more about our Lifting Barriers initiative at rider.edu. Explore what's possible.
The game hasn't started, but he has. He rattles on about every record ever set. He knows more about the MVP's dating habits than the MVP does.
He averages more right swipes than left.
Even his stats have stats. You take a cold sip of Heineken, he keeps going. But at least the Human Encyclopedia is teaching you stuff. With a bottle of ice-cold Heineken, you give him a little toast while saying, "Great, tell me the ratio of Harvest Moons to the number of red cards the ref calls." Heineken, where others see a know-it-all, we see a chance to know a bit more.
Quick Draw from the New Jersey Lottery makes winning feel epic.
I will pick up to 10 numbers. Then the game will draw 20 numbers. Who's with me, Jersey?
I want to match more so I could win more.
My $1 bet could win up to $100,000. Let's go!
Go epic with Quick Draw. Played every 4 minutes at lottery retailers. Anything can happen in Jersey.
Must be 18 or older to buy a lottery ticket. Please play responsibly. If you or someone who knows a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
WMGK Philadelphia and WMGK HD Digital 1, a Beasley Media Group station.
Acme Markets presents John DeBella's Turkey Drop on Tuesday, November 24th. The John DeBella Turkey Drop is the largest one-day food gathering in Philadelphia, benefiting City Team Philadelphia. So stop by your local Acme Market on Tuesday, November 24th, as MGK will be collecting turkeys and cash donations to serve holiday meals to families in need in the Delaware Valley. For additional information, simply go to WMGK.com, click on the Turkey Drop events page to see a list of participating Acme Markets. Acme, fresh food, local flavors. Amtrak has rolled out new safety measures, including enhanced cleaning, efficient air filtration, and physical distancing. Learn more at Amtrak.com.
Another long block of back-to-back rock begins now on Philadelphia's one and only station for classic rock, 102.9 NGK.
Thank those who have served, those that are living that you know that you can actually, you can't hug or shake their hands nowadays, but you can thank them for their service, and also honor those who gave their lives for this country so that we can sit here comfortably in Newtown Township. Most of all, treat people with respect and kindness, and together as a community, we will be stronger when this is all over. If we would just bow our heads for a few seconds. You stand with the board for Pledge Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Lewis, any changes or additions to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes or additions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. No special actions. I guess we will go into our first session of public comment. Anyone who would like to make comment of any item that is not on the agenda tonight, please come up for first public comment. Okay. Next is our 2021 budget, authorization to advertise adoption of the preliminary budget. Mr. Sander, if you would just go over some of the procedures with this.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Pursuant to Section 3202 of the Second-Class Township Code, the township is required to annually prepare a proposed budget, and once it has a preliminary budget developed, it is required to advertise that preliminary budget for at least 20 days before it can be adopted as a final budget. That 20-day period is to allow review and inspection by the public and certainly public input on the budget. After the preliminary budget is advertised, it may be further amended or revised by the Board of Supervisors, and upon any revision of the proposed budget, if the estimated revenues or expenditures in the final budget are increased more than 10% in the aggregate, or more than 25% in any major category over the preliminary budget, the budget may not be legally adopted with those increases until it's again advertised once, the same as the original preliminary budget, and an opportunity given to the taxpayers to examine the amended preliminary budget. A major category, as defined, is a group of related revenue or expense items, the combined total of which is listed as a line item. So the action before the board tonight is to consider the advertisement of the preliminary budget for 20 days prior to it being considered as a final budget.
Okay, so this is not an approval of a budget or anything like that. This is just a motion to advertise. And during the course of these next meetings that we have, we can make adjustments. We can make adjustments tonight, even if we want.
Sure.
Because we're going to have a discussion on the budget later on. So we can make changes during the course of the next few meetings that we have before we have to officially adopt a budget.
That's correct.
And when do we have to officially adopt a budget?
By December 31st, 2020.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Sander?
Yes, can I get clarity? If we approve to advertise, I'm not quite sure what budget we have before us because it went out for a revision, but we only can change it plus or minus 10% in the aggregate.
In the aggregate, and plus or minus, well, up to 10% in the aggregate and up to 25% of any major category.
But the main thing is the plus or minus 10%, or plus whatever.
Either they both may be applicable.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's 10% of the expenses or the revenue?
Correct. Yep, yeah, yep.
Any further questions? Okay.
I actually have a question for Mr. Lewis.
Sure.
Thank you for that budget as requested last meeting. I have a question regarding it. If we added an additional mill to that budget, would that allow, this would be an estimate at this point, allow us to add the police officers back, or some of them?
That, I mean, one mill is roughly 350,000. So theoretically, yes, you could add the officers back.
Okay. I like the idea of doing that. I don't know if anyone else is thinking along those lines, or...
Okay, well, you want to discuss it later when we go into the budget discussion, and
Sure.
right now,
Well,
we just want to advertise.
Well, the thing is, I think, where I am comfortable with the tax increase and where the original budget is are probably more than the amount allotted apart to make a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't come lower now, I won't be able to do that after it's been hung.
Well, can we make that change during the course of the budget proceedings?
And I had a question also for Mr. Sander. If we advertise it now and say at our, I guess the next meeting within 20 days is going to be our first December meeting.
I think it's going to be November 25th.
Okay. Is that within 20 days?
Oh, no, not within 20 days. The first meeting within 20 days will be December 9th.
So,
correct.
So that would be the first time that we could do anything final.
Correct.
But if we make a change that's bigger than 10% in the aggregate or 25% in that, we have to re-advertise.
Correct.
So come November 25th, the day before my birthday, if we make a change, then we have to re-advertise and the 20-day clock rolls.
Allow another 20 days to pass before you act on the final budget.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, and if my math is correct, we could even make a change on the 9th of December. I think that's our next meeting, the first meeting in December. But we'd have to have a special meeting before the end of the month, 20 days. There is 20 days in there, I think.
It would have to be advertised. As I think I said at the last meeting, the drop dead date to advertise a preliminary budget that at that point cannot be changed more than 10% in the aggregate or 25% in any major category would be December 11th, because that is 20 days before December 31st.
But we can talk about making changes right now, and what would happen if we decided, instead of 7.5 mils increase, to reduce it to some number, maybe 5, I don't know. How does that affect the timing if we discuss items on the agenda that can be changed so that we can get the total millage increase reduced?
Well, I think that the issue now is whether you want to advertise a preliminary budget that you would then advertise and at your next meeting authorize Mr. Lewis to make certain changes to. he would have to determine whether those changes would require re-advertising or whether they're within those limits. If you want to discuss it tonight and hold off on authorizing advertisement until you've had the discussion, you can certainly have a discussion, give Mr. Lewis direction, and authorize the advertisement of that preliminary budget.
Okay. I'm assuming that, we're here tonight to discuss things like that. And for me, I'm not totally satisfied with the original manager's preliminary budget, which I assume is the one that we're talking about to advertise, unless we change it. Is that correct? Which budget are we talking about?
That's a question for Mr. Lewis.
So the budget that we're talking about is the manager's budget. The manager's budget was updated with year-to-date figures for this meeting to give a more accurate depiction of where we're at.
But you didn't change the increase in the millage?
No, the millage stayed the same as was presented in the manager's budget presentation.
And if I may, we did the exercise of looking at a 40% increase, and I don't think any of us are extremely happy with that because it eliminated just about everything.
Well, how do you know we're not all satisfied with that?
I don't know, maybe you are.
Well, I'm satisfied with some of the things that were cut and not satisfied with some of the things, that were cut to make that budget. So, for example, I would eliminate the .125 mil increase for the fire fund, especially if we're, saying we're going to only give $160,000 to the Newtown Fire Association, not the $175,000. So, and also, I'm a little concerned about the increases to certain salaries. I've heard from a lot of residents who have complained a lot about that because a lot of residents have maybe been furloughed, and my son, for example, had to be rehired at a lower wage. And, today is the 245th birthday of the U.S. Marines. And as one Marine veteran resident told me yesterday, Marines have a phrase, officers eat last. And in terms of raising salaries, I noticed that the managers in a lot of departments have large increases in salaries, whereas everybody else, even our chief of police, gets only 3%. So one of the things that you recommended in the 40% budget was that all staff be assigned a 3% increase in salary. And, that's something I would agree to, I would like to see. So there are other things like that, we can talk about.
Well, yeah, we're going to discuss the budget later, but right now it's the motion to advertise. And it sounds like no one wants to advertise the existing budget, so we could either put that off to the next meeting or even the next meeting, or come back on the 31st of December and vote on the budget. But right now, I think the motion or the suggestion to advertise the existing preliminary budget seems like by consensus, no one wants to do that. Am I correct? I'll make a motion to table the authorization to advertise the adoption of the preliminary budget.
I'll second that, as long as we have a further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, that should be to a date certain, just for the record, so that we know when to consider removing it from the table.
Well, we could keep putting it on the agenda until we approve authorization.
Sure, sure. So I assume would you be okay with tabling the consideration of advertising the preliminary budget until November 25th, 2020?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, but there's no guarantee that we're going to authorize it at that. That's what I'm saying.
True.
This could be a rollover to every agenda until we finalize.
Absolutely understand that, but just so the minutes reflect the meeting at which the matter can be taken off the table, that would be November 25th.
Okay.
Fine with me as well.
I'll amend my motion to table. Dennis amended a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor of tabling?
Is there a discussion of that?
Well, you had you discussed already that.
Well,
I don't believe.
You made a motion, there should be
I don't believe,
a discussion.
not 100%, but I don't believe that there is discussion on a motion to table. I think the motion to table is considered immediately. And the reason is because the motion to table is to cut off discussion about the topic.
Of an actual motion.
Technicalities, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so we will table this until November 25th, I believe is the date.
So I'm really still confused.
No minor approvals, no public hearing. We're going to get to discussion of, and then we can discuss everything.
Oh, okay.
I won't chip you out. No public hearings, reports of committees, boards, and commissions. I don't see any committees here tonight. Board members, I just have a couple announcements. I believe we have a couple vacancies, one on the Sewer Authority, and also we're looking for a recording secretary. Although we have an excellent one, Mary would like to retire and take it easy. So if there's anyone out there who would be interested in recording secretary, please contact Mr. Lewis at the, or Olivia at the administration office. That's all I have to report. Dennis?
Real quick, three simple things. On Halloween, we had sponsored the Finance Committee had sponsored a financial town hall, and unfortunately, due to lack of registration, that was canceled, and nobody came. I sat over here and waited. Nobody came. So just wanted to report that. Also, I see COVID-19 is going to be discussed later on in the agenda, and what, meetings and how we want to structure meetings going forward, keeping in mind that infection rates have gone up and hospitalizations have gone up, and deaths as well. But the third, so we'll get to that. I just wanted to remind people to be safe. And lastly, I would ask that the election was last Tuesday. If people could get their political signs off the road, that would be great. I know they have a time limit in the ordinance. I didn't get a chance to look up and see what it was, but that's my three things.
Mr. Mack?
Yeah, I just have something interesting from the Joint Zoning Council. First of all, Lisa Wolf of the Bucks County Planning Commission reported that the jointure has been awarded a municipal service program grant of $23,000, which is slightly less than the $25,000 that the jointure asked for. And the cost of the, this is for developing, modifying the comprehensive plan. And that total fee for that to the Bucks County Planning Commission will be $50,880. But there was an interesting discussion on trails at the trail and traffic part of the comprehensive plan. And it seems like Upper Makefield Township is not ready to approve any language in the plan that would say that what the townships would like to have are interconnecting trails between townships. They cited concerns over their rights of way. They don't have rights of way on their roads, and they're afraid of encroaching upon private property, so they don't think it's feasible, and they asked for some modifications to that. And I know that the Newtown comprehensive trail plan does try to call, I believe, for trails that connect municipalities. I brought up the trail plan for Lower Darlington Road, which I think will go up to Lower Silver Lake Road and into Lower Makefield. Hopefully there might be a connection to the Garden of Reflection there. But Lower Makefield is not part of the jointure, but that was kind of the plan. So it was an interesting discussion.
Mr. Mack, may I ask you a question? You said they got a grant for 23, and the full cost was $58.80 or something like that.
$50,880.
How does the remainder of that get? How does the remainder of that get paid?
The townships would have to pony up the money, and according to the way it's divided, you know.
Well, Newtown Township would do the most,
obviously, yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Park and Rec report for November 10th. Upcoming programs with Parks and Recreation, we have free Rectivity bags for youth and seniors sponsored by TD Bank. Each bag includes multiple nature-themed crafts and coloring pages. It does not say how to acquire one, however. The next item is a vegan sides and starters program, and there's a dinosaur mania program, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oxley?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Reports, we have no land development. Reports of officials. Engineer has nothing to report, thus she is not here tonight. Solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and only item on our report this evening is consideration to authorize the Cohen Law Group to negotiate a new cable TV agreement with Comcast. And this is because the current township agreement with Comcast Cable TV, which provides them the ability to provide cable service to the residents of Newtown and in exchange pay the township the appropriate franchise fee, is expired. And we need a new one. And the Cohen Law Group is a law firm in Western Pennsylvania that specializes in negotiating cable TV agreements and telecommunications agreements with service providers. The Cohen Law Group is also the law firm that the Bucks County Consortium uses to negotiate its franchise agreement with Verizon. So while they use them for Verizon, I'm not quite sure why they don't use them for Comcast, but they don't. So we have to renew our agreement with Comcast. We thought that that would be the best place to start. They have submitted, the Cohen Law Group has submitted a proposal to the township, and the township, and it includes a 10% discount if Lower Makefield, whose agreement has also expired, joins with Newtown, and the Cohen Law Group can do both agreements together. If Lower Makefield doesn't participate, the cost would be $12,600. If Lower Makefield joins, the cost will be $11,340. So we're not 100% sure. We believe that Lower Makefield will participate. We don't have that for certain yet. That's why we're asking that the motion be to authorize the Cohen Law Group to negotiate the cable TV agreement with Comcast at a cost not to exceed $12,600, but most likely it will not exceed $11,340.
Now the 10% discount is off the $14,000, which is given to us at $12,600.
Correct.
But now if both municipalities were to agree to this, it's $11,340.
Correct.
Okay.
So
we are getting a 10% discount even for just us.
Well, yes, and that's if I should have been more specific. There are two parts to the services that Cohen Law Group is providing. Mm-hmm. One is to negotiate a new contract. Two is to audit the accounts of Comcast and the township to determine whether Comcast paid the township the appropriate amount of franchise fees on the last contract, the one that expired. So we're paying them for two different things. If we engage them to do both of those things, they give us a 10% discount off of that price. And then if Lower Makefield joins, we get an additional 10% discount off of the price.
And how long is this contract good for?
I don't know.
It doesn't say.
The most recent Verizon one is only good for 10 years. Only good for 5 years. Typically, we've done 10-year agreements with Verizon and Comcast. The current one has expired already, so we really need to get it in place.
But the $12,600 would be just a one-time fee for this contract. Now, the contract could be for 10 years.
Well, or less.
And it was 15.
Or less. It was 15. Verizon's is only for 5 because the future of cable television is in question at this point, and the service providers are reluctant to commit to the longer-term agreements. Thus, don't be surprised if Cohen Law Group comes back to you and says Comcast will only agree to a 5-year agreement.
Now, do we have any idea what kind of fees we collect for the franchise fees? Mr. Lewis, do you know offhand?
I defer to Mr. Lewis.
Typically, it's 5% of their revenues.
Any estimate?
Well, in our budget is $426,000 between the two.
So signing a contract for $12,600 is, we got a good rate of return.
Yeah, it's $500,000 a year, yeah.
Did you say 426 for both?
496,000 for
496 for both?
For both, Comcast and Verizon together.
Okay. So, Mr. Sander, do we need a motion to approve this contract?
Yes, it would be a motion to authorize the Cohen Law Group, or to engage the Cohen Law Group at a cost not to exceed $12,600 to negotiate a new cable TV agreement with Comcast and to perform an audit of the previous contract to determine whether the township has been paid everything it is owed under that contract.
Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion second. Any questions from the board?
I have a couple of questions. I don't know how this is going to play out. I mean, I'm assuming that the board will have some input into the negotiation somehow. Will the consultants come here and discuss their plan, or how does that work?
They'll provide updates.
Because they mentioned something, for example, revenue sources from the cable Comcast. Our current they have 20 revenue sources, but the consultants have identified 7 new revenue sources. And, I was just curious as to what our chances are of getting more revenue and so on. Are those kinds of questions something we can ask them during this process?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
And somewhere, I'm sorry, John, if you weren't done.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Somewhere in the agreement, it also talks about doing a public presentation before we agree on the contract with Comcast. So if there would be 2 necessary, I'm thinking they could possibly do 2.
The other question I had that they mentioned in there was these days the renewal should require improvements to the channels such as high-definition electronic program menu titles. Are we able to take advantage of high-definition TV with the cameras that we currently have and the other equipment?
No.
One of the, and I must say, there was an inquiry about this agreement came out of the Finance Committee, and I do want to thank the Finance Committee. One of the things we can ask Comcast to do for us is do what's known as a PEG grant. It's a public education grant, and they call it PEG grant. And one of the things that those PEG grants can be used for is to update equipment. So,
well, what is the $496,000? What do you do with that?
It's revenue.
That's
it just goes into It doesn't go into paying for all of this
No,
stuff?
it goes into the general operating account.
Why doesn't it go into improving our communications with the high technology cable TV access?
Because that would be part of a capital plan. So that it goes into the general revenues, and then part of the capital plan is upgrades to the system.
Right, I just noticed that other townships have much better quality video of their meetings than we do, so, I was wondering, why shouldn't that money be used to improve the quality of our
And on page 5, under number 4, PEG channels, they talk about the channel that we have provided for us, but also a PEG cash grant should be available from Comcast to pay for capital costs of that channel.
A grant is something you have to apply for. It's not positive you're going to get it. But the franchise fee is something positive. You're getting a lot of money. This is a question I have. It goes way back to when I discussed this with some other township managers or supervisors about how come they have such great, high definition coverage of their meetings and so on, and we don't. And they're telling us they're using the franchise money for that purpose, and also to help them hire people who are experts in certain things. So
I did a little research, and I talked to a township manager, and they used their PEG grant to upgrade their.
Well, like I said, the PEG grant
equipment.
is not a given. It's something you have to apply for, and it's competitive, isn't it?
In this case, if the law firm, it's another example of another good reason to bring this law firm on to represent us, they'd make sure that we got the chances of getting the grant were greatly increased.
Well, nothing's for sure with the grant.
Nothing's for
but
sure.
What's for
Tomorrow's
sure
not.
is the franchise fee, and I'm just curious as why we don't allocate some of that money to improving our system, that's all.
And I'm saying do both.
It would seem that would be a Board of Supervisors decision. It's a budget issue. If a majority
Well, now's
of
a
the
good
board,
time to bring it up,
the majority of the board feels that they want to upgrade the quality of the broadcast, then that's a budget line item that you can use that money for. It may come from the capital budget, as Mr. Lewis said, but that's part of the budget process for the board.
Okay, I'll make a note of that and bring it up when we're able to discuss changes in the budget. Thank you.
Okay. Also, I think it's should be noted that the franchise fee is not given to us by Comcast or Verizon, but isn't it an accumulation of the fees that are collected from the residents who may use either Comcast or Verizon?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The residents pay a franchise. If you look at your bill, it says local franchise fee or municipal franchise fee. And that's, Comcast or Verizon collect it, pay it over.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public on this franchise agreement? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you. That concludes our report.
Okay, thank you. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General fund balance as of this evening is $2,435,158. Plan expirations before the board with no action required. And we have Chief Hearn to give his monthly police report. Evening, Chief.
Good evening, sir. Month of October 2020, Police Department documented 1,476 calls for service. We logged just under 19,000 patrol miles for the month of October. We had 16 arrests, 3 were narcotic related, 2 were for possession, and both of them narcotics arrests were at one out of Philadelphia, 1 out of Montgomery County. 1 possession with intent to deliver, and there's an investigation of the sales from a 16-year-old. There was 13 DUI arrests, so just a reminder, please take Uber, Lyft, taxi, call a friend, do not drive drunk. There were 17 new cases referred to our detective division. 6 crime scenes were processed. We did have a vandalism at the Manor House in Newtown Crossing. Windows were broken. As a result of the investigation, 2 15-year-olds were apprehended and are being prosecuted as a result of that. On 10/29, we did have a vehicle pursuit of a suspicious vehicle in the shopping center. That pursuit was actually terminated due to public safety concerns. We were unsure whether it was a burglary suspect or somebody loitering in the area. As a result of that, that subject was later identified as a homicide suspect wanted out of Bristol. Lower Southampton, a few days later, engaged that same vehicle in a pursuit into Philadelphia, where they also terminated that pursuit. It ended up in Virginia, where the Virginia State Police pursued the vehicle and apprehended the subject. There were 60 motor vehicle crashes, 4 injuries, 30 non-injuries. Out of them, there were 18 deer-related collisions. There were 109 traffic citations issued and 151 warnings issued. We had 2 truck enforcement details, one in Rutgstown and one Upper Makefield as a part of our task force, resulting in 15 inspections. Our DEA drug take-back was on October 24th from 10 to 2. It was a drive-through. We had 46 designated visitors collecting 135 pounds of unwanted drugs. In addition to that, we nearly collected over 300 additional pounds from our police lobby. So that's a reminder to the public, our lobby is open 8 to 4, Monday to Friday. So any prescription drugs that you no longer need, please dispose of them in our lockbox. Last week, I gave commendations out to several officers. Sergeant Frank Ambrose received a 25-year service award from our department. Corporal Deppy, Police Officer Whitney, Police Officer Ciambrello received a life-saving commendation for the fire rescue on Diamond Drive of the blind gentleman. Police Officer Helvig and Detective Bush received 2 commendations, one for merit and one for letter of commendation. One was for a narcotics investigation, and the second one was for a firearm seizure. And finally, Corporal Bartle received the commendation of merit as a result of an investigation at the Homewood Suites with a significant amount of narcotics and U.S. currency recovered from that location. Frauds are continuing, so please do not give out your personal information. Don't buy gift cards to anyone you don't know. We actually issued several posters around the different Rite Aid pharmacies and CVS pharmacies, pictures about reminding people, stop, don't buy gift cards for your friend, your neighbor, to help out with your Apple account or whatever else they're telling you over the phone. Just a reminder, do not do that. And our new hire projected for November was pushed back to December 1 due to investigation reasons. Philadelphia, there was a couple candidates from Philadelphia. The background investigations are continuing, but the interviews due to the civil unrest in Philadelphia delayed a couple of our interviews. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the chief?
Were there some increase in deer crashes?
Yes, sir. There was 18 deer-related collisions.
And this is the time of year, and you note that in your report.
They're continuing, yes. Please slow down, especially dusk and dawn when they're out there. We're posting it also on our social media feeds.
Yeah, I had a question about the truck task force, and it said that there were 3 citations issued and 7 warnings. I know that we talked about warnings before, and for example, if I'm speeding or something, you might give me a warning just because you're nice, but for trucks, why is a warning and not a citation?
We leave it up to the task force officers. As a result of that, that warning may be just a light bulb out on a turn signal. Some things happen when we're in transportation. We don't want to harm truck drivers. Truck drivers are vital to our economic stability. So at that point, it's up to the truck inspector to determine whether or not a citation is warranted or not. If the truck is totally unsafe, we will put the driver and/or the vehicle out of service and issue the proper citation.
So there's various levels of...
Yeah, there's 3 different levels of truck inspections that the officers do. It depends on whether they climb underneath and check brakes or just do a walk around and check the driver's information.
While you're up there, I just had a question from the bills list. If you might be able to answer, I don't know. It's on page 4 if you people want to know about it. It's personal protection consultants. a fee of $1,196 for I don't know what it is, personal protection, control, and defense.
It's probably, was it training? Was it a training element?
I don't know.
We sent 2 officers to defensive. Part of our police reform that we're projecting for next year is to instruct officers on defensive tactics. We sent 2 officers, I believe they're going next week for that training. I had to prepay for that training, so I believe that's what it is, $1,100?
That's correct, that's a training.
Something like that, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
Chief, I wanted to find out, you said you had some hires that are still going through background checks out of Philadelphia.
That's correct.
What's the normal timeline for something like that, if the backgrounds are clean, or clear, excuse me, not clean?
Could be within the next week or 2.
Okay. But, so in terms of, and these folks from Philadelphia they are officers that are there now coming out, they're not coming out of the consortium or applied for the consortium or anything like that?
Yeah, they all took the consortium test.
Okay.
These were actually the top testing and scoring candidates on our list. There's 4 total. There was 5 total. 1 was actually already declined.
Okay.
So we have 4 remaining, 3 of which are active Philadelphia officers, 1 of which is not.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else for the chief? Chief, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to note real quick that the township offices are closed for Veterans Day tomorrow. And I extend my thanks to all the veterans out there for the services and the work that they've done. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Let's see, minutes, bills, list, and reports. Mr. Mack. I have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, the bills list, I move that we approve the payment of our bills according to the bills list dated November 10, 2020, totaling $326,851.87.
I have a motion to have a second.
Second.
A motion is second. Any questions from the board on the bills list? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Finally, I move that we approve the interfund transfers as per the bills list dated November 10, 2020, totaling $410,773.03.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Mack. We go into our second session of public comment. Anyone who would like to come up to the podium and say something, please do that now. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Vincent Gazzardi. I live in Newtown, and I've been in this town for 28 years. And my block is Taylor Avenue, and it's never been repaired. That's one. Number two, last year my taxes were $1,078. Now, if there's a 40 or 30% increase, that's too much, because I'm retired. I don't have an income. I'm barely staying in my house. What are we going to do about that? I think it should
Is that your total taxes?
As a what?
Is that your total taxes?
No, this is a township.
$1,000 some odd dollars to the township?
$1,070. $1,070 for county municipal real estate tax. Now, what if
that would include the county and probably the school district also.
No.
Probably not the school
This
district.
is not the school. This is the township.
It's the county and the township.
Yes.
The county is separate. County is more than the township.
Okay.
So more than half of that $1,000 is going to the county.
But what is the increase on? Which part?
there should be, and I'm not looking at your bill, but there should be a line item
Yeah.
that says Newtown Township.
Newtown Township is $160.88.
That's how much we're talking about when we're talking about raising taxes, that 160 some dollars.
You're increasing 40%, the $160?
I'll let others respond. I just wanted to get it clear that we're talking about apples and apples on your tax bill.
All this is numbers to me, it's not real.
That's why we're explaining it to you.
That's correct. The increase in the manager's budget is on the municipal taxes for Newtown Township, not.
I can't hear you.
The increase in taxes is on the municipal portion of your tax bill. So it's on the $160.
And you would have to multiply that by 1.78 to figure out what your new tax would be.
But I thought it was going to be 40% increase, that's what I heard.
178% increase.
How much?
178%
Increase?
yes.
How could you increase that much?
Well, I don't know, but you'd have to apply that number
then
to
you should,
your $150.
my street hasn't been fixed. I haven't in 28 years.
I'm sorry, say what?
My Taylor Avenue has never been fixed.
You mean repaved or?
Repaved.
Okay.
Where's the mic? Oh, here, I'm sorry. Taylor Avenue hasn't been repaved in 28 years. And the lights are out. A lot of lights are out.
Well, that's good to know, Mr.
Gazzardi.
Lewis. I asked Mr. Lewis if Joe Schiavone, I guess, could provide me with a list of roads, a database. We must have a database that lists all the roads, portions of roads in Newtown, and when was the last time they were repaved. And,
Well, right now, we're sweeping up a lot of black granules. The street is falling apart.
I hear we have a new way of fixing potholes. That
Sir,
would
are
be
you
much
in
better.
Borough?
Yeah.
Are you in Newtown Borough?
No, I'm not in the borough. I'm in the township. Taylor Avenue.
Yeah, it goes into the township.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm just looking
It's
at it
right
now,
on the
trying to
border.
figure out where it is.
No, I remember door knocking there. It's a regular development, like, all of ours.
Well, who would know? I mean, will they know here in the township?
Would they know what?
Who would know when was the last time the street was repaved?
I'm sure the Public Works Department could help you. Probably.
You go south from Lafayette.
Well, what are you going to do with my seniors like me? Are you still going to increase us?
Well, it remains to be seen. We
Yeah,
haven't,
well, I've also been paying school taxes for 28 years and I don't have any children.
Correct.
It's not right.
I'm retired also and do not have children in the schools, but
Yeah,
they
but
were
see-
graduates of Council Rock North, and
They should be in Long Island, New York.
that's where I came
They
from. And I
have-
don't want to go back there. So.
No, but they have a discount according to income for the seniors.
Is that right?
They pay according to what they,
I guess we got to talk to the school district.
their tax returns. I mean,
School district raises taxes every year.
Yeah.
well, they're not elected officials, but they could do anything they want.
The school
Yeah, they're
board is
elected. Yeah, they're elected. Sure they
School
are.
board members are elected officials, sir.
Yes,
They
sir.
are.
All of them.
I
And
never-
they meet just like we do. They meet and they have a public meeting and you can go there and yell at them because you're paying a lot more to them than you are to these folks right here.
Oh, I know that. You guys have nothing to do with the school, but what I'm saying is, I'm trying to get justified, and, money only goes so far. I don't get a raise. I haven't had a raise in a long time. Thank you very much.
We definitely
Thank
hear
you.
you. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Mike Palestini. I'm from the MARDOT section of Newtown. And I'm here tonight because I read in the Career Times about the 178% increase in the taxes. But then I hear there's a 40% increase. Can you tell me which one is which?
Well, we had the manager do two different budgets so we could look at it to see. Again, it's a matter of can we still maintain the same services with a lesser increase? And that's what we're going, that's why we didn't before make a motion to authorize advertising, because we want to take a look at both of them to see which one would be viable for the township. And, I mean, we understand, I mean, we're residents of the township also, but we also have to take into consideration, do you want the police protection and fire protection? I mean, these are things that we also have to look at. So we're going to look at both budgets, and who knows, maybe we'll come somewhere in between. We don't know. That's why we want to analyze both budgets.
Yeah, my understanding is that the 178% increase was proposed by a consultant, right, a few months ago?
Well, there are a few different plans that the consultant, and that was one of them.
Okay. And my understanding was, one of the reasons was, I guess there's a drop in revenue from, I guess, the pandemic, right? So to me, that sounds like there's a drop in revenue because people aren't employed, right? It would seem to me then to hit us with such a high increase, quite frankly, any increase, you're hurting the people that are already hurt, right? I mean, if they're unemployed and now they're going to get hit with more taxes, it doesn't seem to be the right time to do that, right? The other point that I want to make too is that if that is the driving factor, it doesn't seem to me to make sense to solve a short-term problem, the pandemic. We're clearly going to, this isn't going to last forever. So to have a long-term answer to a short-term problem doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Well, what we're trying to do is have a long-term solution, which we've never had, and that's why our budgets have diminished during the course of the years. Now, we've lost probably $700,000 in earned income tax when Lockheed Martin left town, and we never recouped that. A lot of other townships are initiating a earned income tax, which we've lost about $300,000 to different townships. So we're $1 million basically in the hole from collecting EIT. Now, if you look at some of the surrounding townships, I mean, one of the largest is Lower Makefield. If they were to institute an EIT tax, an earned income tax, we're going to lose another $400,000 of revenue coming in. So that's what we had to balance. Where can we get this revenue? And in some cases, the only way is to raise taxes somewhat.
Sure.
Of which in this township, this gentleman's been here for 28 years, I've been here for 33 years, and there's never been a tax increase in all those years. So we were fortunate enough that we had development happening, we had transfer tax from sales of houses, we had things like that that was, helping the township survive at that time. But sometimes you just hit a brick wall, and what we're trying to do is raise enough revenue so in the next few years we don't have to do that. And if we do recoup from COVID finally being over and people are back to work and maybe we're going to be collecting that additional revenue, there's nothing to say that we can't lower taxes once we get that revenue coming back in. It's like a catch-22, so to speak.
No, I understand, and there's cost of living increases every year, right? I would strongly encourage the board to limit any kind of tax increases in the short term until we really, I think, get a good grasp on the full impact of what the virus is. I'm guessing that report was probably generated several months ago when we were in a much different place, I think, economically in the country than we are today. So I would just encourage you guys. I mean, this poor gentleman here is worried about a 40% increase, and now we're talking about 178% increase. I mean, that's going to decimate some families, me included. I would just strongly encourage you guys to be sensitive to that. Maybe a better approach, maybe a staged approach where instead of one big increase this year and nothing for the next few years, maybe it's a little bit over the course of the years. I think that'll help families kind of plan that hit out easier. I think, and also, maybe we look at areas we could cut costs, again, in the short term, where we may cut costs a little bit to kind of carry us, through the storm.
Well, that's what we intend to do, and hopefully by going through the budgets the next couple of weeks, sharpening our pencils and trying to figure out what we can do. But I mean, a lot of the things that we have, the budget is probably 90% personnel. So who do we cut? But I understand what you're saying. So we're going to try to figure that out, and if we could do without for the short period of time, we will. But I think it's just like anyone else. Households are tightening their belts.
Sure,
and
exactly.
We have the same effect too. I mean, costs go up for us. I mean, when it snows and we get our calcium and salt, they don't give it to us for free.
Sure.
And they're going to raise the prices if they can. So we understand, again, we're all residents of Newtown Township, sure. And, we hurt just as much as anybody else does, and that's why we want to analyze it as best as possible.
Yeah, like I said, I just encourage you guys to maybe get a little creative and look at areas where we can dampen the impact, right?
Absolutely.
And my last question is the budget posted online, is just so we can look at that?
When would the budget be online?
The proposed one, is that where we can review that ourselves?
The budget will go online once it's authorized to be advertised.
Once it's advertised,
Yes.
Which was tabled till the next meeting, correct?
Next meeting, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. I guess we have old business, and I guess this will be the time that we can discuss and will discuss the upcoming budget. So I will leave that up to the board for discussion. Anyone who would like to start, we could go from Mr. Oxley over or from Mr. Davis over, whichever we want to do. Mr. Oxley, you got anything to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was reviewing the 40% tax increase that was considered from last meeting, and I'm looking at it versus what we have now, and we don't know. There's a lot of ups and downs in terms of what we can consider for what our COVID situation looks like, but I think our Parks and Recs department has done a nice job in terms of figuring out different ways to create revenue. I was just over there today, and I saw some of what they were doing to reach out to the youth and also to some of the seniors and so forth, and all the different outdoor activities they've done. I think reduction in the Parks and Recs, expenses, summer camps and so forth. I'm looking at it here from past years. They've created, so in 2019, they did $586,000 in revenue. In 2020, year-to-date, right now, they're $225,000, and that's almost a little half, based upon the fact that we didn't know how to handle the pandemic, we didn't understand how to social distance, things like that. But I think that as we continue to figure out how to manage the virus, that might be a great place that we might be able to pick up some revenue. So I don't necessarily think that we should eliminate that. I'm just in I'm very much still deliberating in my mind about what makes sense for this budget, just because I understand that folks are very upset about the 78% increase, 178% increase, but I've calculated it for my home. I've calculated it for some of my friends, and some folks are okay with it, some folks aren't. I heard our resident here, I heard our other resident here talk about the impact it will do to them. So I think that we still need to deliberate a little bit more on it, but I also know that we are in a challenge because we could run out of money, correct? We could run out of money when? If we go with the 40%.
It would be probably mid-2023.
Okay. At a 40%.
That's correct.
And with no real true plan of how to find other ways of revenue besides taxing or adding an additional millage or so, I don't know what else we can do unless we figure out a way to commit to finding ways. And then also with that 40%, there's no hiring of an assistant township manager position. Now, you all heard me on my soapbox last time talking about economic development and bringing revenue to the township. And we talked about a line item for that, and Mr. Chairman, you said it would be on the shoulders of probably giving it to the assistant township manager as a particular role. Now, if we don't have an assistant township manager and we don't have a line item for economic development and we have a small increase, what happened? There's no plan there. There's no other source of revenue. And that's my challenge here with this whole thing, because we're kicking it around, but there's no plan in terms of other sources of revenue. And if we find a way to have other sources of revenue or plan around it, then that makes sense if we maybe reduce the millage increase if we have a plan around economic development or different sources of revenue, but we don't have that right now. And unless we truly commit to that, I don't know if we'll have another increase down the road. And just because COVID's here right now doesn't mean that we won't have those long-term effects for 3-4 years on a township. We have a school district that raises taxes all the time, and they're not even, and those revenues I know go towards my kids having Chromebooks, and the teachers can sit and they can view the teacher in the classroom and so forth. So the dollars we know go somewhere, right, for a positive return or investment on our kids. Here, a positive return or investment for our township is finding a plan, and we don't have that here. We have revenue that is coming from our wonderful citizens, but if they don't want a tax increase, which I understand because they're concerned about how they're going to pay for certain things, and they might be struggling with their own current employment, or someone may be furloughed, we have to at least show the township residents, if we are going to increase these, that we have a plan to reduce those taxes maybe down the road. Thank you.
If I may just interject, and I hear what you're saying, but I look at the school board, and sure, my kids went through the Council Rock School District. I don't have any children in the school district at the time, and I understand that probably when my kids were in school, there was somebody else paying taxes for my kids to go to school, and I think it's kind of like a wash. But what I find is, for this gentleman here who's retired, doesn't have any children in the school district, and he's paying exorbitant taxes to the school district, what is he getting from the school district? With the township, for $100 and I think less than $200 a year, you're talking about police protection, fire protection, public works, park and recs, and so on. The township is, for what I'll call your investment in the township, you are getting services for that. Now, if we go with the 40% and cut some costs, you're right, we will not have a assistant manager that can do economic development. But we would also not have any kind of money of which Mr. Fisher was proposing last time to dedicate to economic development. So we're kind of buttonholed there. I understand. I think revenues at this particular time, until things do get better, taxes are the only way we can. Now, do they have to be so high for the time being? Maybe not. But I think if we go to 40%, we are going to have to sacrifice that assistant manager. We are going to have to sacrifice someone dedicated to economic development. And maybe that falls on our shoulders, on Mr. Lewis's shoulders, that we have to make these so-called phone calls and try to make the contacts, which is not beyond us to do. So I understand what you're saying, but to rob Peter to pay Paul in some cases, I think Paul will catch up with us and want some more money.
And it's unfortunate that we're in this position where we have to make these calls, but I'm continuing to look at this thing, and you're talking about reduction in police training of $10,000. There's also reduction of radios, ballistics vests, tasers for 3 additional police officers. there's all these different things here. I mean, elimination of AV upgrades. I mean, you heard Mr. Mack talking about the technology piece here, reduction in computer upgrades, like all the. I mean, I'm back to the police piece of it. You know, we all know what's going on in this country. We all know that there is a dire need for a better opportunity for the police to be, have the training that they want, also have the resources and services so that they can de-escalate situations. And, I know we are in Newtown Township do a fantastic job of that. Police Chief Hearn's done a great job with that, but you want to make sure that they still have that stuff, and we're going to cut that. And as a person of color, that's not what I want for my police department. I want my police department to be trained well enough and have the proper services and resources so that they can de-escalate something. And that's a huge concern for me. So I don't know, but as a person that lives here, I couldn't see myself reducing those types of services for them. And, even if we did do this still and made it a reduction, there is no guarantee that we won't do it again next year. And we don't know what the future holds, right? So I'm just, like I said before, still struggling with this, trying to figure out what's the best solution. But my ultimate thought around it is we need to figure out what makes sense from a long-term perspective, and we have to have a plan in place for all of that. And if the revenues coming from the residents right now is the only way, we have to at least provide them with, hey, we have a plan for how to reduce it down the road, and we don't have that yet.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification that Mr. Oxley was mentioning, the ballistic vest and taser reduction. That was for if we did not hire these 3 new additional police. This isn't for existing police that would cause a problem. I would never advocate for not providing proper equipment for the police department. But.
Why don't you carry on with anything that you want?
Sure. As I said earlier, I do agree to some extent that this reduced tax budget cut some things that I'd rather not see cut, and specifically referring to the police officer portion of it. So I was proposing changing the second proposed budget, adding $1 million for the police officers, and add that to the budget. That's what I was trying to see if we can get consensus on and go with that. And as far as this Park and Rec, I love Park and Rec. I love the department. I love what they do. I don't consider it a revenue generator. They do bring revenue in, but it's at an expense. It's not like pure revenue. So I mean, I think cutting summer camp expenses and staff, I don't think is a bad idea. We're looking at part-time summer help and reducing the cost while not affecting our current employees. But I think that's something that we could put in as a cut. And I'm glad Mr. Oxley was going through the list. I was trying to, my whole idea for this budget when I asked Mr. Lewis last meeting was to come up with some ideas of things that we possibly could cut, and I was hoping that would start a discussion with this board on what we could cut out of the budget, and that's where I was going with this. I'm not hearing a lot of anything as far as what can cut, only explanations on why we need to raise taxes. So I guess it didn't work in that respect, but we had a program for a number of years where we would alternate the police department's vehicle upgrades. You know that, Phil, that we'd rotate it, and that's in this list. We don't get them new vehicles every year. We do an alternating year and get them on a more spread out basis so that it spreads the cost out and it's not a hit as often every year. So just things like that I was looking for, things that we've done in the past that are cuts that are not going to severely impact operations but could help reduce the tax burden on the taxpayer.
Okay. Well, I appreciate those are things to take into consideration. The only thing I find sometimes with cutting back on a police vehicle is that we're just kicking the can down the road, and sometimes by cutting we're doubling up the next year. So, but I mean, I'm not opposed to looking at that. Maybe it is something that can be done. That's for consideration. I think it's a good idea. But to get back to the Park and Recs, Mr. Lewis, the Park and Recs revenue that is gained by the township, does that exclude like the salaries that are paid? Because I was told that's what makes us more profitable, because in that figure, we're not including the cost of the people working in Park and Recs. It's just basically a revenue figure.
It is. It's just a revenue figure.
Whereas other townships may include that, we don't, so it does make our Park and Recs a little bit more profitable as opposed to some townships which may blend in the salaries. And I remember all the time Mr. Levine making that argument. And I think it's a very good argument that that's what makes our Park and Rec such a money-making department. Okay, I'll go to Mr. Mack.
Okay, what I did was, 40% or 178%, maybe somewhere in between. And I looked at the 40% budget and all the things that were cut from it. And so,
Your mic. I thought it was in that movie. What was that movie, The Graduate? Anyway, so I looked at those items that were suggested to be cut and said, well, which ones would I agree to and which ones I wouldn't? And when I went through that, what I thought was more reasonable and to look at the millage increase instead of 7.5 or whatever it is, I thought we could get it down to 5, and this is how I thought we would do it. I already mentioned the staff increases. Everybody, I think, I agree, should get a 3% increase if it's good enough for our chief of police. It's good enough for everybody. Everybody's working very hard. I know that. And as I mentioned, my son's working very hard, but he had to take a pay cut to keep his job. So there might be a lot of people in that situation. It's not that they're not doing a great job. It's just that, we need to do more, basically. And I also mentioned I would eliminate the 1.25 mil increase for the fire fund because I just don't agree that, that's another salary increase that's over the 3% and a decrease in funding for the Newtown Fire Association, which I don't agree to. So now I would also eliminate the Director of Zoning and Code Enforcement position. I agree with that. I don't want to get into all the reasons. There was a resident here who explained how we could get more code enforcement if people shared responsibilities, like in the fire department, for example. The elimination of 3 police officers I don't agree with. However, I would go with what the consultants recommended, that we hire 1 new police officer in 2021 and 2 in 2022. That was in their recommendation, and I would agree to that. I wouldn't eliminate the township manager position for reasons that Mr. Oxley already mentioned and other people. Hopefully they can help with what Mr. Lewis has to do and free up time to write more grants. I don't want to eliminate police overtime expenses. I don't want to reduce police training. And I don't want to eliminate Public Works part-time summer employees. Now, the reduction in the 2020 program funding of $350,000 to $70,000 from the general fund, I don't agree with that. I think that we should keep the $350,000 in there as a line item to repave roads at a rate that we've been doing over the last few years. I think that's something you give back to residents. That's a tangible
something they get from me, it's $172 a year, and it's 178% budget, but it would be much less if the millage was only 5 mils increase. So I would keep that. I don't agree with eliminating summer camp with the Parks and Rec. I do think it's a great program, and it brings a lot of people attention to Newtown, and I wouldn't eliminate that. Now, there were some capital expense changes that were recommended there. I would eliminate the police building study. I mean, we do a lot of studies, and I just feel that sometimes we do these studies to justify what we wanted to do in the first place. So, you know, we don't really need that at this point, is my opinion, anyway. I would eliminate the MS4 project. I don't know exactly how much money that involves. It involves planting weeds or something in the parks, and I don't know how necessary that is. It may be necessary to do that. I agree with Mr. Davis about the police patrol vehicles. We had alternated. We did 3 new vehicles in this year, didn't we? Or so maybe we can skip a year. And as far as the capital public works expenses, maybe we don't need that new dump truck and F-350, so we can save around $40,000 there maybe. But I would keep the reduction, I would keep the computer upgrades. I believe in technology, and we need to do that. And I don't know what the audiovisual upgrades were, but whatever they were, I think we need them. I wouldn't reduce the radios, ballistic vests, and tasers for, well, that's for 3 additional police officers, so we would eliminate 2/3 of that on my plan. And I don't agree with the reduction in the road program funding of $606,000. So I just tried to go through the numbers. I'm not an accountant, and what I thought was if you only raised the taxes by 5 mils, you would still be able to do most of the things that we need, not all the things that we want, and you would still have a reserve fund of about, I would estimate it 13%. Right now, you're at 15%. And I always agreed that we need a hefty reserve fund, but when the auditor was here, he mentioned you can have too big of a reserve. So going into this new year, I think, you know, we could do with a 13% rather than a 15%. So right there, you may be saving 1 or 2 mils, I don't know. So that's how I look at it. It's not whether we should pass a 40% increase or 178% increase, but somewhere in between, if we can look at these items that were taken off the original budget and put some back, you know, that's how I would proceed.
Mr. Fisher.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different look at it. We have to think about serving our community and the services that our community needs and wants and has become accustomed to. Those don't stop. It doesn't stop when we're faced with COVID. I mean, it might be a little different, but it doesn't stop. We still need services. We still need fire protection. We still need police. We need to keep our police at their accreditation. It's very valuable. We need to have Park and Rec. Maybe it can be modified somewhat, but we need to look at it at what services are necessary as well. Yes, we have talked about why this tax increase is, why any tax increase is necessary. One of the things we haven't talked about was this is something that's been going for years. From, 2010, maybe before that. We've taken some steps. We've taken some steps this year. We postponed some capital expenditures. We had a retirement in the police administration that we haven't filled that spot yet. We put off some capital expenditures. We pushed them back. How long can we do that? I mean, I can go down the list too, and I would be glad to. But one of the things we haven't talked about is, I haven't mentioned it, we are starting with one of the lowest millage rates, real estate millage rates in the county. And when you increase that, any amount, the percentage is going to be high. That I'm all for trying to get it below 178%, but 178% is $360 for me. I'm retired. I'm limited, fixed income. We'll absorb that $20 or $30 a month in my mortgage payment, which I still pay. Almost done. But yeah, I would, like I say, I go down the list. Staff wage increases 3%, that's fine. I would keep the assistant township manager. I would hope that the assistant township manager that we hire would have some zoning and code enforcement background, so we could eliminate that position, at least for the foreseeable future. I would push one of the police additional officers. I'd be amenable to pushing one of those back into 2022. But with that goes the overtime expense. So if you reduce the number of officers, the overtime expense is going to be higher. I wouldn't want to touch police training. I mean, it's one of the things we've been asking for. So Public Works part-time summer employees, we put that off. That's one of the things we did over this past year. Maybe. Reduction in the road program funding. I know that again, that's one of the tangible, I like how John said that. There's one of the tangible things that people see. And I know in my neighborhood, if we need our streets done, and if people knew that it was getting $300 tax increase or something related to that, but they were getting their roads done, that for some people that might be worth it. Looking at the capital outlays, the park and rec staff, I'd be willing to look at it, but I don't want to reduce that. AV and computer upgrades. Wow, we can't. I mean, you got to improve those, and you got to keep up with. I mean, we'll get our equipment wearing out and not working, and then where are we? AV upgrades. That was one of the possibilities of the grant from Comcast. I would eliminate the police building study. I'd have to find out more about the MS4 project and what that entails. But if it entails us losing some support on our, or having our MS4.
The MS4,
program.
that's a line item for capital purchase of basically seed mixes for the meadows.
Okay.
Well, isn't the MS4 also an unfunded mandate by DEP?
Yes.
And it's not really something that you could say, that doesn't sound like something that's very important and we don't really want to do it.
Right.
It has to be done.
Right, or we lose that approval.
Or you're going to get fined and
Yeah.
penalized by
Yeah.
DEP. It's going to be ugly. Every single municipality in the Commonwealth is wrestling with the fact that they have to comply with MS4 without any funds coming in from the state to do it.
And that's one of the capital purchases that was put off this year.
All the police capital, I'd match it up with those two officers, so if there's a reduction from 3 to 2, next year I'd match that up, but that's not a whole great big lot of savings. Every little bit helps, I guess. Reduction in the road program funding. Again, roads are a tangible piece. What I would like to suggest is that we look at our ending fund balance and be willing to accept, the manager's budget had, I think, a 14.7 year-end balance percentage, 14.7, and we would save some by going down as low as 10, but by statute, by ordinance, by resolution, I guess it is, 10% as low as we can go, and I wouldn't want to plan to go any lower than that.
But Mr. Fisher, if we went down to 10%, and if we went down to 10%, Mr. Lewis, from the proposed manager's budget, what does that come out to as a total millage from the original 12.49? What does that go down to?
It equates to approximately 2 mils.
2 mils. Okay. So that would take us down to 10.
It's 10 and a quarter.
10 and a quarter. Okay.
And Mr. Calabro just corrected me. I think we did a resolution that for 10%, but there's no mandate.
No, there's no mandate, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, we could go as low as 0, but we wouldn't want to do that. And in fact, ESI, when they were looking at our 5-year projection, they had us projected, if we don't do anything, is a 2% negative next year, and a 45% negative by 2025. So we have to, I mean, that's the whole part of it too, is we have to correct what's been done incorrect, what's been done what hasn't been addressed. I won't say it was incorrect. What hasn't been addressed over the last few years, we have to address that and get us to a place where we are, we lose our bond rating. That's a valuable. When we need to go borrow money, and we do, for vehicles, it affects the rate we have to pay, our interest rate. So, could talk about all the ways of gaining revenue, cost containment, better management practices. Yes, hiring an assistant township manager is an expense, but it might lead to a more efficient operation, and it probably will lead to more. And if that person has an economic development expertise, we need to look at revenue enhancement from economic development.
And that person,
yeah.
Mr. Lewis, if there was an assistant township manager, I'm sorry, I feel so low. I'm trying to fix this chair all the time. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm actually quite tall, everyone. But if we end up in a situation where we have the assistant township manager, they report to you, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we would be able to make sure that they are held accountable to pursuing economic development on a daily basis. or weekly basis, however you see fit. But, you know, technically we would be asking for that.
And that's fine.
Okay.
The scope, from what I'm hearing from this discussion, is that this assistant manager would be also serving as a zoning and code enforcement director. So you're already taking half of the assistant manager's position and allocating it to another staff member.
Depending on their expertise.
You would still have a part-time zoning officer.
No,
Why not?
he was never brought back.
Well, what was recommended was the fire chief could participate as a zoning officer as well. No?
Who recommended that?
One of the residents, I believe.
Our fire chief does not have the
I'll-
expertise
yeah,
in zone.
I'll wrap.
Dennis, are you finished?
I had 1 or 2 more minutes.
Mr. Fisher, I apologize.
That's okay. So, another point that hasn't been made, it's of Bucks County's 54 municipalities, we are currently have the 5th lowest municipal government real estate tax. If we do the whole enchilada, if we do the whole 12.5, we would still be 22nd out of 54. So there'll be 21 lower millage rates than us. And if I do the math correctly, 32 that have a higher millage rate. And that's just the municipal rate. We look even a little better with the school taxes when you include that in. So we pay municipal, we pay school, and we pay county. But the county rates all across the board the same. So to wrap it up, my goal is to keep taxes as low as possible, keep us in the lower third, lower 1/2 of the county. We have to stay competitive, but township residents, as well as the board, need to answer the question about what price are we willing to pay to keep Newtown Township a great place to live and keep it competitive.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fisher.
You're welcome.
I guess I see things a lot differently. I don't like to use the word taxes. I like to use the word an investment in your community. And I'm always of the idea that it should always be safety first for our residents. Now, we talk about eliminating a car or eliminating a police officer. But if you are the family that needs a policeman to come to your home, and that policeman couldn't get there because maybe he was driving a car that wasn't maintained or was too old and broke down, it only takes one. And it may not be you, it could be your neighbor, it could be anyone that you know. So I feel that eliminating some things from the police department, because the police department are what makes our township as good as it is. If we don't have safety, then, we might as well be Dodge City, so to speak. As far as officers, do we need 3 right now? Maybe we could have 2 and in the mid-year hire that 3rd and carry it over to the next year, so this way it carries that expense and we're saving that money. But I don't think we want to cut it too thin. We cover a lot of territory here. We cover Newtown Township, and we also cover Wrightstown. We also answer calls into the borough when they need us, because our technology is so far advanced, they need us at times if there's even a break-in. We answer calls on the bypass. So, our police officers, not only are they well-trained, I always say they're second to none. And to cut back on them, to me, is cutting back on the safety of our residents. Now, if we as a community have to pay a little bit extra, and I broke it down to a daily. Some cases, a person with a $850,000 home, their increase is going to come down to $2 a day, broken down. Now, that $2 a day, I don't even think it could get you a coffee at Starbucks nowadays. But if for that, they're getting the police protection, the fire protection, public works, EMT, and also park and recs. And I understand some people that are retired may not have children, but you may have grandchildren that are in the park and rec system. For what we get for this, for what we pay the township, we're getting a big bang for our buck. Now, I just look, and not to pick on the school district, but I've looked at their charts, and they raise on the average 14% every year. They don't tell you. They don't mention it. And I'm not saying we're holding back, because again, education is another aspect of our community. But I think what we have to decide is, what are we willing to invest? Are we willing to pay that $2 a day? And that's on that $850,000 home. Some of them are even less. I calculated homes at a modest $250,000. And the increase amounts to 67 cents a day. We're all getting these services, every one of us. My question is, who among us is the person who wants that police officer, that fireman, to come late to your home? And I'm just talking about the safety aspect here. In regards to hiring a person who's going to be assistant manager, who's going to be taking care of our economic development, well, that's another aspect of us gaining revenue. If we don't have this person that would help Mr. Lewis in his administrative duties, we're not going to be able to attract business to come to Newtown. And then I do understand that some people get laid off or they're furloughed. But to hold that at the expense of our employees, it's not their fault that they have a job. It's not their fault that they have contracts that give them increases. And in some cases, some of the managerial people have taken some cutbacks. A few years ago, I remember when the police department didn't even take a raise because they wanted to help the township. So, I mean, I guess the bottom line here is it comes down to, what do we want and what are we willing to pay for it? Now, if we don't want taxes, then there's something else that's going to compensate for that. And I don't think it's going to be a good compensation. It may be that your road won't be plowed in time. And God forbid an emergency vehicle has to get down that snow-covered road. It may be that I don't know, I hate to say, someone's house is on fire and it takes the fire department extra time to get there. You have a break-in at your house, it takes the police department extra time to get there. You have grandchildren, but now they have nowhere to go because we don't have a park and recs department that you can bring them to enjoy that. This has been a domino effect for years. I mean, I've seen budgets go down. We were talking about 10%, which would be, what's that, $1.3 million. I've seen our general fund go down to $500,000 because a manager had to borrow money to make payroll. So we could either bandage this up and stop the hemorrhaging, or we could just keep putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Now, I understand that we can look at these and maybe make certain cuts. But I think when we're starting to consider cuts in regards to safety, I think that's a different story. I still have time. And I think that, you know, Mr. Mack talking about the roads. I remember being on the board when they talked about doing a mile of road, which was a patch here on 413, a patch on Newtown Crossing, a patch in Newtown Gate, but never a continuous 1 mile of road, because we didn't have the money. Now we're paving maybe 2-3 miles of road a year, maybe 4 at times. I think back when Mr. Ferguson was here, we did almost 5 miles of road one time. This is something else that the people are getting for their bang for their buck, so to speak. So, raising taxes, you know, everybody says 178%. But if you were to give me $1, and I said I'll give you 178% return on that dollar, tomorrow I'm going to give you $2.78. Percentages are the biggest ploy in the world. But when it comes down to dollars, like I said, it's $2 a day. 67 cents a day I've calculated for some person. Somebody on the board here is going to pay an additional $1.16 a day. Is that worth it to invest in your township, or would you rather just see it go by the wayside? Do I want to raise taxes? No. I don't think any of us here want to raise taxes. Like I said, we're residents. We live here. Some of us are retired. Some of us are in positions where if we don't sell something, we don't make money. So we're all in predicaments here. But again, don't think of it as taxes. Think of it as an investment in your community. And if you want to make that investment in your community. Go ahead, Mr. Mack.
Well, I don't think anybody here suggested we're cutting back on safety issues. We're adding more police. We're actually taking $15,000 away from the Newtown Fire Association. So in that budget, that increased taxes by 178%. So I don't see what we're looking at. What I'm trying to look at is how to limit the increase and still improve services. I think we can improve the safety of the township with 1 additional police officer, and as we've done in the past, we don't have to have 2 new police vehicles this year, maybe the next year, and that's not defunding the police in any shape or form. So, you know, I don't think safety is at stake here. If you cut down from the 178% budget, somewhere in between there and the 40% increase. So, you know, what I was suggesting is that, you know, some of the things we can eliminate, and I've heard several people agree with some of the things I was saying, and most of the things that we can keep. And I would be very happy with just the 5 mil increase. I don't want to talk about percentages. I want to talk about millage. And that's what really counts. As you said, it's about the money. So for me, 1 mil is worth $34 a year. So I would save $100, you know, going from the big budget to the one in between. And I would like to pay less taxes, but I understand that we need to have a healthy township, and I'm not even suggesting, I don't think anybody here suggested we go below a 10%, you know, reserve fund. In fact, I thought we can get it down to 12-13% and still reduce the number of millage significantly. And then what happens, you know, we have 2022 to look forward to. I don't know what will happen in 2021, but I'm pretty sure we'll make it through with a less of a tax increase. That's all I'm saying. I don't think a 40% tax increase is going to really do it for us. I don't like some of the things that were eliminated. I want to keep them, and I think I went through all that, and I don't know how we move forward from here to try to get a consensus on what should stay in the budget and what should be eliminated so that we can come up with a new budget that we can hang, or whatever you call it, put out there so the public can actually see these numbers.
Well, I guess what has to be done is, we're all talking about different things and different items. You have to actually go into the budget and either cut or add. You got to take money out, or you got to put money in. I understand that always, every year, the police department is always the one that is talked about taking the cuts. And I understand cutting and rotating the police vehicles is something that's always spoken about, but in my experience from past budgets that I've sat on, whenever you cut one car out, the next year you have to put 3 cars in because you were scheduled to put a car in, but now you're behind. So do you want to keep kicking the can down the road, or do you want to just get it done all at one time? Now, to get to your issue with the NFA, they're getting less money. I believe the NFA is an organization that can raise money. They could have fundraisers. They could go out and solicit funds. I don't think our police department can, because it's a municipal department.
Nobody's defunding the police.
So I'm not talking about
the
defunding the police. You're talking about a $15,000 difference of 160 to 175, of which that $15,000, the NFA could have fundraisers.
It's a bad signal.
They could go out and they could raise the money. The police department can't, because they're a municipal organization. I'm not saying
The police department is getting everything. Nothing's being taken away from the police department. You're taking away from the fire department, the Newtown Fire Association. They had to cancel their best fundraising event, the Beer Fest, because of COVID-19.
And because at one time they did not even want to do it. They wanted the township to take that up. Am I correct, Mr. Lewis? I mean, they didn't even want to do it this coming year, so COVID was I hate to say it, but COVID did them a favor. So you're talking about an organization that could go out tomorrow and raise money. They could raffle off like everyone else does, a Mercedes-Benz or whatever the heck they want to do. But you're making an issue that they're only getting 160 and not 175, again, of which they can do. And I'm not saying about anything about defunding the police. I'm just saying in the opposite aspect, taking a car away from the police or cutting back 2 police officers, well, that money there, the police department can't go out and raise money to say, hey, we need another police officer. Let's go out and raise that money.
Can we just compromise? I'm just saying, let's compromise. I mean, all right, maybe...
I'm not saying...
Don't eliminate 2 police cars, eliminate 1.
Well, that's what we have. Well, you asked what was the procedure, and I think that's what we got to do.
Yeah,
we have to sit down, look at the budgets, we all take them home and start crossing out, adding, get our red pens out and see what we can come down to.
Well,
To the township manager?
We send our suggestions to Micah.
He can collate them all out. I don't envy that.
Well, let me ask you a question. All right, so you gentlemen are talking about different scenarios of how to cut things, and 1 mil equates to $350,000, correct?
Yeah, roughly. Yes, correct.
Okay, so 15 grand here, and a police patrol car is what? 100,000?
No, each car is about $48,000.
$48,000, so $63,000 total right there for a patrol car, $15,000 from the NFA, 1 officer, what's that, $60,000? So right now we're at $123,000. We haven't even touched a mill yet in terms of the cuts that you're trying to make. So I don't see where where else in this budget we can cut anything, is my statement. Because unless you go back to, and I know Mr. Davis, this is a mock, what he was putting out there in terms of 40%, and then Mr. Lewis basically showed us exactly what that would look like. But it wouldn't even equate to a mill in terms of what you're considering right now, I think.
Yeah, a mill, let's again call the mill the $350,000. Now, what the township could do, again, we're all looking to keep 10% of the balance of the budget in what I'll call the general fund, rainy day fund, whatever you want it. That doesn't benefit us unless possibly we use it.
Right.
And is now the time to use it. We could always, what I'll say, lessen that percentage. And I'm not saying bring it down to zero, but we could bring it down to 500,000. Again, we were sitting here last meeting, and our projections are, well, we might get money here, we might get money there. Again, I called it, a hope and a prayer. But it's, if you have, it's almost like if Mr. Fisher has, double the amount of the money to pay his mortgage, but he says, nah, I'm just going to keep it there. I'll worry about paying the mortgage. What do? Do you use your money? Do you use the money to pay certain bills and certain things that are in the budget? Or do you just let it sit there and we could just walk around happily saying, it's 10%. I think that is a decision we need to make also. Whether we want to keep that 10 or 13%, 15%. There was a time when I was on the board, there was 30% was in the general fund. And when they say too much money, yeah, that was probably too much money to have sitting there when it could go to the benefit of the people of the township. So, you're talking about cuts, you came up with like 200,000.
Close to that.
Well, how much more do we have to take out of the general fund to make it 350,000?
I have some numbers here.
Another $190,000.
That's not much.
I can give you the numbers. If we staff only increased 3%, we're saving $36,000. You're eliminating the .125 mil for the fire fund, that's $15,000. You're eliminating the director of zoning and code enforcement, that's $40,000. If you only hire one additional police officer, you're saving $117,000. If you reduce the no police building study, that's $20,000. Reduction of 2 police vehicles is $57,000. The dump trucks and so on is $41,000. So it adds up, that adds up to me to be a mill, about, So maybe we don't need to eliminate all those things. I'm just saying, we could make substantial cuts, but still have maybe instead of 2 police cars, 1, instead of 3 new police officers, 2, let's compromise. Let's get some cuts done.
Not every police officer makes $117,000.
If 2 police officers would make $117,000.
What about their benefits and all
I
that
didn't
stuff?
even calculate that. I went by their salaries.
That's way more than that.
When you hire a new police officer, they're coming in at a certain rate, right? Step one. Okay. So
$50,000-$60,000.
Is it 50s? Or is it 64?
I'm going by what is in the budget, the salary, the line item in the budget for new police officers, what was in there.
Did you say eliminate the zoning officer?
Well, that was my suggestion. I don't know if.
But if we're going to incorporate in the duties of the assistant, are you saying eliminate the assistant manager also? Because when you look at it, that person.
I don't want to eliminate assistant.
But that person will be doing the duties of the zoning. I'm saying we're, in that person, we're getting like three professions in one. Hopefully, He's going to be the assistant to the manager. He's going to be helping with economic development, and he's also going to be doing zoning. So
Well-
we're getting three in one with this person.
How are we doing zoning now?
That gentleman right there.
Who, isn't there somebody doing this?
No.
That's not what I heard. My neighbor just called a zoning officer, and his name was not Michael Lewis, who came over and looked at his construction.
That's Rick. That's the building inspector.
The building inspector? Well, I don't, if you need a zoning officer, well, then we need to keep that in there, okay, so.
But I'm saying it'll be this one person doing these duties. We're not getting someone extra. We'd be getting this one person doing these duties,
So it
called
sounds,
an assistant manager to Mr. Lewis.
No, if you need an additional person to do zoning, and if that's that's up to, if that's a necessity, we need to do that, so.
well, those people will potentially be hired or not hired, right? Depending upon what you see in terms of interviewing and so forth. But, it sounds like from what I'm hearing from both of you gentlemen is that you understand that the services are needed. So why don't we look at how we can I'm thinking about a 10% that we've been kicking around here for a little bit.
What's 10% come?
The proposal was what, 15 point?
Right, the fund, it's the
fund.
expenditures to the fund balance.
Well, again, dollars and cents.
Sorry about that.
Another 300,000?
That would, we brought it down to 10% from the projected or the proposed 15.5.
To get it to 10%, you would be reducing the overall millage by 2 mills. So it would be essentially a reduction to $964,329. I was actually playing with these numbers today. as well.
That's almost 3 mils, isn't it?
It's
900,000? Or you're knocking it down to 900?
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
Okay.
So
But what does that look like in terms of, like, when we talked about on an assessed value of $400,000 home, it being, was it $1.03? Was it $1.03 a day?
Yeah, that's about what mine is, yeah.
And then, Mr. Chairman, you said on the $250,000 home, it was 71 cents a day?
I'll tell you in a second. Yeah, well, on a $263,000 home, it comes to, well, at the old, it comes to 70 cents per day.
Okay. Because then that would reduce, and I think that would keep all the services that, our township needs, and also reduces the increase that our residents don't want to see it being that exuberant number. It's come down some, so we're meeting everyone in the middle here.
Now, also look at the possible windfalls. We are going to have two hopeful developments being built.
Correct.
That's going to increase transfer tax, going to increase people living in those homes paying EIT tax. Now, to me, things like this are windfall. I wouldn't put them in a budget,
Okay.
but I would consider them windfalls if they happen.
That's the hope you talk about.
That's the hope.
The hope.
But that's a definite hope if these go through.
Correct.
Because they are going to be built, they are going to be selling for a substantial amount of money, and the people living in there are going to be making, hopefully, good money to contribute to the EIT tax. So these are things that, in time to come, will be additional income to the township. It's not now. It's not happening now. But you're talking about, do we have a plan?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is sort of like a plan.
Right. That's what I want to hear, Mr. Chairman.
And
thank you.
You're welcome. But right now, there's no guarantees.
Sure. It's all hope.
It's all a wish and a prayer. What's that, a
Hail Mary.
Bon Jovi song? Or what? But anyway.
Living on a prayer.
Living on a prayer. But I think these are good points that we have to look at.
Understood.
And COVID hopefully ending and people going back to work. The businesses in Brixmore are going to flourish. People are going to be going out to eat. People are going to be coming to our town. we're the township that all the other townships have to go through. And what do? They stop at our supermarkets, they stop at our restaurants, they stop at our stores. So once this gets over with,
Sure.
we should see an influx in income coming to businesses and otherwise.
Well, we're also a desired destination for a lot of, based upon my conversations, we're a very attractive place for growing startup biotech companies that I've had discussions with. So when you talk about those types of businesses potentially coming to Newtown because we're close to 95, our access to Philadelphia, New York, stuff like that, there's an opportunity there that we will be able to make something happen. It's a hope, but...
It's again, a phone call away. And like I said, the best thing is if a New Jersey company were to relocate to Pennsylvania, and they're all New Jersey workers, and we collect all the taxes, we don't have to worry about splitting it with the school district. And we are attractive because we are between Philadelphia, Princeton, New York. So our locale is so convenient. But again, this person, hopefully, this mythical person that we're hoping to hire would be that person making these phone calls and hopefully setting up these appointments.
Sure.
And if you know somebody, or Mr. Mack, or me, or Mr. Fisher, or Mr. Davis, we could always pick up a phone and call someone to see if they want to relocate to Newtown.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like we've got some good stuff, brewing here to develop down the road to help increase the revenue here in the township. But would you say that the 10% would be a good number you'd be comfortable with for now?
10% in the general fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
So that would reduce your projection, right? To the 10.25.
That's correct.
That will reduce the millage, which will reduce the taxes.
It would reduce the millage by approximately...
But still maintain the services.
Correct.
And I think, that's somewhat of a win-win. We're reducing the taxes, saving the residents on their tax money, but we're also maintaining the services of which they are entitled to.
And we're not leveraging our financial future.
Yeah.
I'd like to...
And that's the part that, we're all very concerned about because of what's happened in the past. We want to make sure that we still have a healthy fund balance, but we also want to make sure that the services are here and so forth. I think about Park and Rec. So Park and Rec, I've been talking about a lot. We all have been talking about it. But I think about it from this perspective. In the winter, there's probably not going to be much Park and Rec, right? No one's going inside for that. But we may need to beef that up, like our employees and stuff like that, for Park and Rec in the spring and the summer, so that we can recoup some of the losses from the winter. Because last winter, we didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
So that's, those are my thoughts. But I'm happy we've had this discussion. I think we've made some tremendous progress. And,
I'd like to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had two quick questions. And this is, nobody has to answer it, but how many bites, say this year we raised taxes however much, and we realize that we need to go back and ask for taxes again. How many, what's worse, doing it all at once or doing it over and over and over? I've heard some people testify that, or, say that they'd rather have it as a step-by-step. So, that's my long question.
Go ahead.
And then my other question was for John. I see you have your mic on. You talked about eliminating the fire tax?
Yes.
Eliminating it altogether or eliminating the increase?
The .125, $43,000 is supposed to cover the salary.
Okay.
Only two things it's supposed to cover is the salary of the fire chief and donation to the Newtown Fire Association. Yet we're raising an additional $43,000 and eliminating $15,000. Where's that $58,000 extra dollars?
I misunderstood you. I thought you were saying reduce that altogether.
No, of course not.
Just wanted to clarify.
And what was I going to talk about, answer?
I'm sorry.
What was the first question?
Oh, my first question was how many bites?
Increments are all at once.
Yes, I have a lot of comments from people that I've been collecting on different places that you probably don't like, social media and by email. And I think the consensus would be the citizens would like to see as the lowest possible increase this year because of COVID-19 and all the problems that people are having. They're not in a very good mood. And, you know, and to spread it out if necessary, and even with the consultants, they did recommend that in one of this scenario 2 that we're supposed to be emulating, they even had another 2 mil increase in 2024, I believe. So the idea of spreading it out is, I don't think, a bad idea, because each year then we can evaluate what we really need to do and how much we should do it.
Oh, I agree, but it hasn't been spread out all these years, and that's why we're in the situation we are today. I'll go back to 2005 when the manager at that time said you should raise taxes a little bit at a time, and it was never done. And here we are in 2020, and instead of talking about a small increment, it's almost like we had to play catch up. But I agree. I always a proponent of little bits at a time. And, you know, I just know that on my homeowners association, we would raise, I don't know, $5 a year. Now, over 3 years, $5. But I just found that if I were to say, well, now we're going to raise it $15, well, people will be up in arms. But we've been raising it $5. The small increments, I agree, are the best way to do it, but we haven't been doing it. So that's why our backs are up against the wall now. But I think by cutting it down from 12 to 10 and you know, cutting down the general fund, we're getting back to, instead of that 12, we're going backwards to 10, which may be the small increment of this time.
I think the budget calls for 15% reserve, is that correct?
I think
That's
14.
right. The budget.
So it'll be from 15%, I don't even think you have to go down to 10 to save what you're talking about saving, 2 mils. I think you might have to go down to 12.
Are we at 15%?
We're currently, the budget that's before the board tonight, it has a 15% fund balance forward to expenditure ratio.
Okay. And the board can change that with a resolution annually.
Mr. Sander, I don't even believe it needs a resolution. I mean, it's just, the fund balance forward is a fund balance forward.
That's correct.
But I mean, as far as the percentage.
The percentage.
Is it binding?
The board establishes the percentage.
Just by enacting the budget,
10%.
just by enacting the budget, you establish the percentage. I don't know that you need a separate.
I remember having to sign different resolutions in regards to changing it from one figure, from one percentage to another.
The balance forward?
The ending,
Mr. Chairman,
The end balance.
yes.
We can talk about that. I have not seen that, but I can be corrected.
what we're proposing is to reduce the increase by a certain number of mills, which could be taken out of the reserve fund to pay for everything else that we're not eliminating.
Right.
So we're not passing it's terms of what budget you want and how much millage increase. If you have the 7.5 or whatever it is, you're going to get a 15% reserve. If it's maybe 5 mills, you might get a 12% reserve. That's how it works.
I would like to check out to see if there has to be a resolution in regards to us changing the percentage.
No, we just decide to have a budget, an increase in millage that is not 7.5, it's more like 5.5 or whatever.
Right, but I'm talking about the ending fund balance, what percentage we want to establish. We establish that percentage.
Well, isn't it, it's currently at 10,
Yeah.
right? Why don't we just keep it at 10? Can I make a motion to keep it at 10? Is that a thing that we can
I
do?
don't think we're done.
Oh, we're not done talking.
discussing
I'm
the
sorry.
budget, or are we
Please,
gonna
please,
carry-
I'm jumping the shark, as some of my elder statesmen have told me before.
We haven't
Thank
even
you.
we haven't even voted to advertise the budget. I don't think we can discuss this.
But
at
let's
the
keep
next
that
one.
in mind.
Okay.
Okay. I'll open it to the public if anybody is awake out there, would like to come up and say anything. No? Okay. Okay.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
guess-
if I may,
Yes.
what is the direction of the board? Like, which direction are we going?
I guess between Mr. Mack and Mr. Oxley, I think the direction is knock it down to 10% in the general.
Well, I think what we decided was we would all send in to you what our thoughts are on how to maybe eliminate some things to get it down to a certain percentage in terms of millage. And you would look at that and try to see if there's any consensus there.
But, I mean, isn't that what we're talking about now? You're gonna send him an email, and then he's like running around doing this and doing that, and I mean,
Well, I mean,
why don't we just come to consensus? I mean, we've basically said that we all, a good portion of us have said that we want to keep the services the way they are. And I'm not speaking for everyone, but that's what I understand. I could be wrong. Forgive me. But we also understand that we want to make sure that we adhere to what the residents are concerned about in terms of millage increase. So the way that we can kind of figure this out is by reducing the proposed 15.5 general forward fund back to what it exactly is currently today at 10%, correct?
So, in other words, what you're saying is, let's give them a millage increase. Let them work out what millage increase we would reduce this down to so that the reserve fund is between 10 and 12%. Could that be done?
Correct. And the way that what I would do it is decrease the millage associated with the general fund, decrease that by 2 mills. That would leave 6.49 mills to the general fund. And that would give you essentially from the budget that is in front of you today, it would essentially give you a fund balance forward figure of 10.25.
10.25?
Roughly.
Okay. So that's the 10.25 is the ending fund balance.
Yeah, so if I'm clear from the board, I'll adjust this budget, the millage associated with the real estate taxes in Fund 01301-100. I will decrease that $2.9 million by 2 mills, the equivalent of 2 mills, which will then end up giving a fund balance figure at the end of roughly 10.25%.
So instead of the millage increase being 7.99, it would be 5.99.
The millage associated with
the general fund
will be 6.49 instead of 8.5 right now. I'm
Right.
sorry, 6.5 instead of 8.5
But
as it is right now.
yeah, in terms of telling the residents, it's the total package, not just the general
Well,
fund.
Correct. That would depend on the addition between all of the other funds as well.
So you have that direction.
I can take care of that.
Very good.
Okay.
So are we advertising that, or do we want to bring that budget back before the board for discussion?
Do you really want to get into a discussion about advertising now?
I'm just asking for direction, that's
Well,
all.
I know one of the residents here would love to get his hands on it, so maybe we should consider that. No?
Well, I mean,
Maybe
if
next time.
everyone is comfortable with that, I mean, we could do that. I mean,
We still have time to do it at the next meeting.
well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's only 2 weeks. I mean,
Okay, all right.
I would suggest
I think I've
waiting for the 2 weeks.
exhausted you gentlemen enough. Thank you.
You would be presenting us with that budget that we worked out. Yeah.
Okay. Kyle, you okay down there?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
All right. Excellent. Okay, just, I got one thing, one more thing in old business, and maybe a brief discussion about the upcoming Board of Supervisors meeting. Do we want to continue in person or via Zoom? I'll just leave that for a quick discussion. Kyle, what do you think?
I'm good with in person.
I think I'm good with in person unless something happens with the infection rate and the county comes and says we shouldn't be doing it.
Well, I think it's, again, I'll do either one, but I don't think I need the county to tell me that there's a lot of infection going on out there. We want to keep everyone safe, people that come in here and also ourselves. So I have no problem with Zoom. I'll show up in person. I live right across the street, so it's not far for me to drive. Mr. Mack.
Well, as I've always said, unless we can do Zoom at 7 p.m. and invite residents to participate, I would prefer that we meet in person.
Mr. Oxley?
I'm going to go with Mr. Fisher on this. I think we should just keep an eye on it and see what, how folks feel, because eventually, I hope not, but we might have to really consider going back to Zoom. So I want everyone to continually think about that. And Mr. Lewis and I can talk about ways to make sure the public can access the Zoom without any Zoom situations that might be a little inappropriate.
Okay. So our next meeting will be, what's that, the 25th, 7 o'clock, live in this room.
And to be clear, I'm okay with a Zoom at 7 o'clock too. I mean, if and when that ever comes.
Well, yeah, Zoom's at 7 o'clock, we're fine. I'm just,
I was just clarifying the time.
Gotcha.
7 o'clock is bedtime at the Oxley household, and
Okay.
if the township wants to see a bunch of kids,
Any new business tonight? No need for an executive session, Mr. Sander, today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Without objection, take a motion for adjournment. Thank you, everybody.